most um in this chat. I'm looking through everyone. And I think I've almost met all of y'all, but for those couple that I haven't, my name is Cassidy. Obviously I interned at Mars last summer and I enjoyed it so much that I'm returning full time this upcoming summer. And they kind of put this on for us last year and it was super helpful for all of us who joined. Just to kind of prep for the interviews that I know that y'all have coming up. So I want to keep this super informal. Just if anyone has questions, I'll leave some time at the end after I do my little spiel. But if you would just want to jot something down in the chat, I'll address it as we go on. And I just want to be a resource for y'all because the second years last year were a great resource for me. So just want to pass that along so that y'all are as prepared as possible when going in for these interviews. So the agenda that I'm sure Will join shortly, but he and I agreed on just kind of going through what our interviews looked like specifically in the format of those and kind of what kinds of questions they asked us and just thinking what y'all could expect. I'm assuming that it's going to be exactly the same, if not extremely similar to the format that they had us do last year. And then he and I are just kind of briefly touch on what our summer internships looked like last year and the projects they had us working on. And then after that, we're just kind of going to leave it open-ended for any questions y'all may have. Again, just trying to be as helpful as possible. So as far as the interview goes, it was 2 30-minute back-to-back interviews. I'm not sure if they're holding them in the CMC offices again this year, but they had it split up into two of the smaller rooms and they had two Mars employees in each interview. So it would be a 2-on-1, 30 minutes, and then you would go right across the hall and you'd do the second one with two different Mars employees, and that one's another 30 minutes. And usually they'll do you and then another first year at the same time, and y'all will just switch after the 30 minutes are up. My first 30-minute block was more behavioral questions, a lot of that STAR framework that I'm sure y'all have been hounded with all of your lunch and learns and things like that. You know, the tell me about a time when X, Y, and Z. I would say out of the 30 minutes, probably 20 minutes were tell me about a time when, and then the first 5 minutes of the interview was kind of just give your elevator pitch, get to know me. And then the last 5 minutes were Mars-based questions. So they really want to see that you've done your homework. So I would encourage all of y'all, if you haven't already, go on the Mars website and look at the 5 principles. I got asked specifically which of the 5 principles is your favorite and why. So they're not just looking to see that you did your homework. They actually want to see that you didn't just go on and look at it, but that you've actually thought about it and that you have a well thought out answer to some of those questions. I also got asked, what's your favorite Mars campaign and why? So make sure that you just look up a campaign that they've done and you have reasoning as to why you liked that one. And really familiarize yourself with the brands. They are not going to ask you anything about candy, obviously. So really focus on all of that pet care. And look into both dog and cat. Don't just focus on one because there's no guarantee that you're going to get a dog brand if you want dog or a cat brand if you want cat. So I wouldn't try and show like any kinds of bias towards one or the other in your interview. Mars really values your personality. So they're really just trying to make sure more than anything that you're going to be a good fit because culture is really, really, really big for Mars. So for me, I'm only 25 and I was a little discouraged that maybe I didn't have the work experience that a lot of my other peers did. But when I got in there, I quickly realized that they don't care what you did before this. They don't care if your career changing. They don't care if you're 25 or 40. Like they just want to see that you're going to be a good fit for the company and that you're passionate about what you're going to be doing there this summer. So after that 30 minutes, I went across the hall and that next block was more so they really just want to get to know who you are, what your passions are. It was a little more lax, a little more easier questions that you don't really have to prepare for. More so just be ready to go through your resume. They're going to have them obviously on the table ready to walk through everything. And they might ask you specific questions about oh, we saw that you worked here and it caught our eye. Can you tell us about that? Or they could either just say, tell us about yourself, and you kind of can pick and choose what highlights of your resume that you want to go through with them on that. And then obviously at the very end of both interviews, they're going to open it up for questions for y'all. And I'm sure, this is a given, but just make sure you show up with questions for them. Because again, like I said, their number one thing is they just want to make sure that you want to be there and that you're interested in Mars. Because I think, a lot of these companies do, they struggle with people who, it was easy to apply because it was on 1220, and like a lot of people will just get in there and quickly show that they didn't do their homework, or they don't really care about Mars. And they're just in there to get interview prep or something like that. So, that was kind of my experience with the interviews. And, just to give y'all a little more, context, I interviewed at 5 p.m. and they called me at 8 a.m. the next day. So they're probably not going to make y'all wait a long time, which I really appreciated. It just shows that they respect y'all's time as students, and they don't want to keep y'all on the hook if you're waiting on deciding other offers and things like that. So I'm trying to think what other information would be helpful regarding the interview. Traditionally, I'm not sure if they're going to do this again this year, but there's no X number of spots that they're going to offer. So if there's 8 people interviewing and they absolutely love all 8 of y'all, then all 8 of y'all will get an offer, which would be amazing. But it just kind of depends on the year. And last year they gave out 3 offers, I think, and then they will give waitlist spots in addition to that. So if, one of the 3 people that get an offer decides to go somewhere else, then almost every single year, someone, either 1, 2, even 3 people have gotten off the wait list and been able to go intern at Mars. So I would just say, if you get that call that you're on the wait list, do not be discouraged at all, because there is still a really good chance that you're going to be able to intern at Mars if it's where you want to be. I think that's everything I had as far as the interview goes. My experience was, it was kind of good cop, bad cop. And it's just kind of the dice roll of, which one you're going to get first. But that was just my experience. I did hear that it's going to be a few different people interviewing this year than has in years past. So I can't speak for if they're going to be good cop, bad cop, but I will say that everyone there is so kind, so welcoming. They're going to make y'all feel so comfortable. So do not stress, do not fret, just go in there and be yourself. That is just the best advice that I can give. I don't think Will is on yet, but when he does hop on, I know that he mentioned that, once we got in the offices over the summer, his manager was one of the ones that interviewed us, and she gave him some feedback on his interview. So he can speak to, I didn't get any feedback, but he definitely did. So he can kind of speak to things that maybe he would do differently if he were to interview again this year. But until he joins, I can kind of move into what I was doing over the summer in my project. And again, I know I've told some of y'all on this call before, so I'm sorry if you're hearing this again, but I worked on a dog treats innovation strategy project for the Nutro brand. Essentially, the Nutro brand had some manufacturing issues with some of their dog treats, and they were down to only, I think, 1 kind of dog treat when I was there, which is not by any means a good thing for a brand that's trying to grow and be more prevalent and recognizable. So my job over the summer was to kind of scour Nielsen, which you will learn when you get there. It's just a bunch of data mining and data research, and kind of see, based on the Nutro, what kind of brand that is, their brand philosophy, all of that, what kind of treats that are doing well in the market would fit in with the brand. And so after I did all the data research and things like that, I kind of narrowed down, well, I think these kinds of treats would do really well for Nutro based on the data. So that was kind of the first half of my summer, was just data research. And then you'll have a midpoint presentation, at which point you'll get a thumbs up or thumbs down, you're on track or you're not on track. And after that, I got, we agree with your decisions based on the data that you've provided and things like that. So I was able to actually take my treat recommendations and craft my own concepts. So I got to actually create my own dog treats, which was really cool. And from top to bottom, the name of them, the packaging, the type of treats they were, the shapes they were going to be, flavors, A to Z, all of that. And then Mars has a really cool resource team that will draft all the packaging. You just send them, hey, I want it purple with stars and the name to be this. And they came back with all of the pictures, and then actually got to test it with consumers, which was probably my favorite part of my internship. I got to actually see real results from people, which is just cool that they let an intern, spend money on things like that. Like, they actually do really value you as an MBA intern, and really value what you bring to the table. So after that, I got my results back. And then from the consumer results, I was able to narrow it down to, I think I landed on 5 different treat recommendations. So at the end of the summer, they fly down the VP from New York and all, the whole, all of the executive vice presidents and the president from New York, and you present to him at the end of the summer, and then you're done. And it is such a good feeling once you're done, because it's a hard internship, but it's definitely a lot of fun. And obviously I loved it. I'm going back. So that was my experience, and that's all I have. I think I'm going to text Will and just see if maybe he got the times mixed up. But while we're waiting on him, I'd love to just open it up for questions. Anything y'all have. Like I said, I want to keep this very informal. So any and all questions are more than welcome. Like I said, I really want to help y'all and make sure that y'all are the best prepared that you can be before going into these interviews.
Hey, Cassie, was there any aspect of like market sizing or casing or anything? It doesn't sound like it from what you said, but I just wanted to confirm.
Sorry, I'm just texting Will. No casing at all. There is, and no market sizing either. That's Mars is one of the easier interviews that I did last year. And from talking to my peers too, that interviewed at other companies, they're just really relaxed on everything. And there's really no prep work that you need to do or anything like that, except for what I mentioned about, company research and things like that. So you won't be blindsided by any in interview casing or questions like that or anything.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, do you remember the people who interviewed you? Were they all on like the same tier, one above where you'd enter as an intern, or like if you took a full-time offer, or were they like staggered with some being a little bit higher, or was it kind of just like they brought in a batch of, I can't remember, like brand managers or whatever it would be?
Yeah. So all 4 of the interviewers, they were all brand managers. So they were all pretty high up. I know that even 1 or maybe 2 of them have even moved up to the next tier after that, which I think is, I can't remember what's above senior brand manager, but I think all 4 were senior brand managers. So I'm suspecting that they're all going to be the same. So they're going to be higher up than you would expect. I mean, it's right below the VP level. And I see that Will just joined. So Will, I was telling him that maybe you would have some advice for the feedback that you got on the interview portion. So if you want to just take that away and kind of give them some insight as to some of the things that maybe you have advice for.
Yep. Hey, sorry I'm late, everyone. I'm pulling up. So last year, if Cassie did not provide you guys the background, I initially got waitlisted on the interview. So I reached out to Mars and asked them for feedback on what I could have done better. And Mars was one of the few companies that actually provided that, which says a lot about the company in general. But I got 2 really valuable comments. And the first one, that is that while my general answers were strong based on my past experience, this was one of the first interviews I did, so I hadn't had the opportunity to really hone my interview skills. So a lot of the answers were about an 80% solution to where I really wanted them to get and where they got later in the process. So if you have time and the opportunity before this interview, I'd highly recommend going through it with your classmates or with someone from the career management center to practice your responses and make sure that they're really hitting what you want to hit. The second one, so the second part of the interview, one of the interviewers pulled out my resume and he pointed to the top part of it, which showed the concentration I was looking at Owen, and I still had operations and analytics instead of marketing because I had not transferred over from when I started looking into marketing internships. So I had to talk through that, and it really undermined the impression that I was looking to give, which was truthful, and it was that I was really interested in marketing based on my experiences at Owen, and that I was looking at learning more about that field in the internship. So the big point I got there was basically refining my story that I gave at the start and questions that they gave me, and focusing on how my path had led me to be interested in marketing in general and then Mars specifically. So really tailoring those answers and taking the time to practice them to talk about Mars would be my top pieces of advice.
And then Will, do you want to talk about your summer internship?
Yes. So, and Cassie, you've already told them about yours, right? Yeah, Cassie had a great internship. I'm sure her story was excellent. So I'm just going to add on a little bit. I think where my project differed a little bit was it was a little more ambiguous than most of the projects that interns receive just by random draw. So we each got assigned to a team. I got assigned to Pedigree, and Pedigree's project happened to be a little more nebulous, where instead of designing a specific product, it was looking at ways to basically boost sales in the categories where Pedigree was weaker as a brand. And I got some initial guidance at the start. What the manager told me was that they were really looking at how to use promotion. So basically what I had to go on at the start of the process was figure out how to use promotions to boost sales in these categories. So with that starting guidance, did you tell them about Nielsen, the Discover?
I didn't really touch on it.
Okay. So like there's a quantitative side and a qualitative side to the internship. From what I saw, part of it was combing through data. And the big database that you have access to, apart from internal documents and research that Mars has done, is a program that Nielsen runs, which collects point of sale data and receipt scans from all over the United States. So literally millions of pieces of data to comb through and look at and try to gain insights from. And the other part of it was qualitative. And to like, honestly, I was pretty intimidated by Nielsen at first. So I tried to not touch it for the first week or two because I didn't really know how to use it or what I was looking at. It's one of those things where there's so much information that you could take anything from it, but you have to like understand how to work through the process. So what I started with was basically talking to anyone that it was suggested I talk to. So we all as interns got a Word document at the start of the project that said like, here are some people who you can start with and who you should talk to first. So I talked to them, I asked them for their input, and I shared what I was thinking at that point, and then I asked them if there was anybody else I could talk to. So by the end of it, I think they call them one-on-ones. So it's basically a coffee chat. I had done like 20 or 25 coffee chats over the course of 8 weeks, just talking to people across the organization in different specialties and figuring out what they knew and what they could add to it. And from that, I started building this picture of what Mars was doing, where it was in the process, what other companies were doing. And from that, that helps me build the quantitative side and put together the presentation. And I'm sure Cassie told you already about the midpoint and the endpoint. Like mine were similar enough to hers that it's not really worth getting into. But I think what I didn't really realize until the end, like the last week or so, as I was really putting together the final presentation, was Mars is really interested in, they call them like flashes of insight, something like that, where you come through the data, whether it's interviews, surveys, advertising information, whether it's going through information on Nielsen, in finding basically a diamond in the middle of all the data that tells you something that changes how you look at all that information and how you approach the problem. So I was fortunate enough to be able to find one in there that really shed some light and had everybody like really interested in the final presentation. So that helped, and I think that led to the offer of full-time job. And the other part was talking to all those people across Mars. So one of the things I got really great, like complimented on at the end, was that I had gone to 2 parts of Mars that notoriously do not like play well with other departments and aren't great at sharing information. But the thing is, nobody told me that. So I just went up and asked them nicely for the information and they gave it to me. So it's like building those relationships across the organization, being willing to like ask questions and like tie all these threads together into those insights. Yeah, see, that's all I have unless there are specific questions.
Yeah, I was going to open up the floor again. If anyone has any more questions for both Cassidy and Will, this would be a perfect time. Otherwise, I also do have a question. Did any of you, Cassidy or Will, do anything to calm your nerves before the interview? Do you have any kind of special thing you like to do before an interview?
I don't think I do. I don't know. My words of encouragement to y'all are just really like, it is a chill interview. Do not freak out. It is not consulting, it is not casing, it is none of that. So those are my words of advice.
So the best piece of advice I've ever gotten on presenting or interviewing came from like when I was an undergraduate, and one of my professors said, like, always think that like you're telling a story. And that has stuck with me since, oh my God, that was 12 years ago. But talking like whatever you're telling, like presenting it in a way that the person can relate to and understand and shows them that you understand them and what they want, and it ties directly to what you want.
Any last minute questions? If not, then we'll go ahead and close out. Just want to give a big thank you to both Cassie and Will for joining us today. If you have any questions, definitely talk to them and follow up with them. But also, Kathleen is definitely available to also do maybe a mock interview or kind of practice one of the interview questions. So definitely reach out to her as well. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and best of luck.
And hey, if anyone has questions, like feel free to email me or talk to me on campus. I'm happy to help out.
I can only echo that. Seriously, we're here to help y'all. So if anything comes up in the meantime, don't hesitate to reach out.